Welcome, everyone. The sports writers are here. We have Phil Stacy from the Salem News, Nick Giannino, and Matt Williams, also from the Salem News. Nick Kukuru, sports editor of the Gloucester Times. So, gentlemen, here we are. We've got 1 week of football playoffs under our belts. We got the other playoff games underway as well for soccer, field hockey, volleyball, and so on. So, I guess it would make some sense to start with some football. And should we look back to start with before we look ahead? Does that make sense?
Sure.
All right. Where do we want to look back to?
Nick, why don't you start with Manchester Essex, and we'll kind of work our way from the bottom up in terms of anyway.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, Manchester Essex took care of business in Division 8 over Quabog this week. It was 36-25 was the final, but it really wasn't a competitive game at all. They kind of dominated and let their foot off the gas in the third. Unfortunately, 1 point away from a run-in time fourth quarter, and it added about an extra hour to the game because Quabog scored a couple touchdowns, used all their timeouts, was, managing the clock when they were down 27 instead of 28. But, Manchester Essex still, did what they had to do. 274 yards and 3 touchdowns passing from Brennan Twombly. A huge game. Declan Kirk, their wide receiver, 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. He come back to the lineup the last week 8 against Lynn Tech. He had gotten hurt in the Kip game, which they lost, and then he missed the next 2 games, which they lost. And he's really kind of, after seeing what they are without him and with him, he's really kind of the key of their offense. They don't use, he's not going to get a ton of volume, but he's kind of their big play guy and opens up the field for everything else. Their running game seems to work better when, they have to give a little more extra attention to him on the outside. He can hit bubble screens, he can take him to the house, and he can go deep. He can, he's a good route runner too. So, they got Old Colony now this week. The 4-5 matchup, I'm assuming the 4-5 matchup is going to be a real good one. Home field could be the difference.
Nick, Nino, how about you with Fenwick, Division 5?
Yeah, they got off to a phenomenal start against Auburn. 42-6, I think, was the final. Wasn't even really that close, to be honest with you. They jumped out early. They were, moving the ball with ease. Their defense was just tremendous against a good running Auburn team. And the big thing with them is they played a clean game. I think they were only whistled for 2 penalties. They didn't turn it over at all. They converted most of their third downs, which they didn't have a ton of because they were moving the ball so well. They beat them in the running game, the passing game. So definitely a great start to the postseason for Fenwick. I don't want to say that it was an easy opponent by any means. Auburn certainly had some good wins this year and had some guys that could beat you on the ground game. They had a pretty big running back that Fenwick did a good job of slowing down, a fullback, I should say. And so they're moving on as expected, and they'll be facing Maynard, number 3 seed in Division 5 this weekend. That's a 7-2 team. They're coming off a big win over Bishop Stang, another team that Fenwick handled pretty easily, 42-25 in the regular season, I think it was. And Maynard just beat them 41-13. Maynard also played Auburn in the regular season, beat them 27-0. So if those two, shared opponents don't tell you anything about the upcoming game, it's that I think this is definitely going to be a bigger test for Fenwick, as to be expected as we move forward in the playoffs here. But again, for them to play such a clean game like that, hopefully they can keep that mentality going forward, because it certainly does make things a lot easier for them. That they have the weapons offensively. They got some big guys, some good tacklers defensively. I thought their defensive backs played tremendous. Auburn, not a heavy passing team, but when they fell down in the game against Fenwick, they certainly had to go into the air more, and Fenwick was ready for it. I mean, they shut down the passing game. So should be a fun matchup with them moving forward. I do see too that Maynard played Hudson in the regular season, the team that just knocked off Swampscott, right, in Division 5.
Yeah.
And that was a 21-7 game between Maynard and Hudson, so relatively competitive there. Not sure what that says about them, but something to keep in mind as we move forward to this next round.
That game's at Maynard too on Friday night. So yeah, I think somebody mentioned that. Yeah, so it's a road game.
Maynard. Yeah, they're the number 3 seed. So.
Yep. Phil, you and I were at Marblehead to see the Magicians shut out Whitman Hanson 35-0.
Yeah, best performance they've had all year, both sides of the ball. I thought the defense was swarming. Really had good scouting report that night and seemed to know where the running plays were going, where the pass plays were going to be. A lot of anticipatory work. They were not allowing the pile to be moved, or they were not allowing Whitman Hanson to move the pile at all. They were making a lot of first stops. There weren't guys like breaking out of tackles. I can only think of really one play where there was a breakdown in coverage on that. I think it was like a wide receiver pass. And the guy got way open, but he was overthrown, or would it go off his fingertips, or just overthrown?
Yeah, I think it was just overthrown. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That could have burned Marblehead, but it didn't. And aside from that, I thought they were terrific. On defense, they played well on special teams. They took advantage of what they needed to do offensively, scored on the very first play after Sam Anisi kind of snuffed out a fake punt by Whitman Hanson on the game's first series in their own end of the field, which, I'm all for, trying to get the advantage on the road in a playoff game, but maybe that wasn't the right time to do that. It worked out great for Marblehead, but not so much for Whitman Hanson. Marblehead scored on the very next play. Miles O'Neill over the top to Xander Danforth. Play of the night, obviously, was the 99-yard touchdown reception to Chris DeWitt after Marblehead had intercepted a pass on its own 1-yard line. Little swing pass from Miles O'Neill to DeWitt in the right flat. Followed, I think it was a Comos block on the right side, kind of cut up the field. Looked like he was going to be caught about the 40-yard line maybe or so.
Yeah, I think so.
Veered off left and made it into the end zone. And I didn't use it in my story because I don't know if enough people would have gotten it, but I thought it was a great reference from Jim Rudloff after the game when he said, geez, I bet Chris wishes he had really gone all out in the wind sprints and all this summer. He looked like, who was it there when he crossed the goal line? The old Fred Sanford doing a heart attack. I thought that was a good line.
But Phil, who could have seen that play coming? 99-yard swing pass for a touchdown. Who could have seen that coming?
I don't know who would have had the brain power to have predicted that. That would have taken a real football mensch.
So here's this guy at the bottom of my screen, anyways, Phil Stacey, who's at the game saying, this could be the longest play from scrimmage for Marblehead football ever that we're about to see here, more or less in those words.
Joking.
So then
to you and Greg Saglaski, the Marblehead athletic director.
Right.
Yeah.
The two of us are there as witnesses to this prophetic, non-Powerball winning Phil Stacey. But
when DeWitt started to break away, I remember Greg kind of like looked at me like, what? Like that look on his face. And then he and I were kind of like, as he's pulling away and like, it looks like he's going to be caught. And then he kind of, you knew he wasn't going to be at that point. And it was, yeah.
Another thing too, Phil, you mentioned that it looked like he might get slowed down or taken down after getting up to the 40-yard line, but also now he's angling across the field from near side to far side. And it looked like somebody might angle him off and cut him off, at the Whitman Hanson 30 or 25, something like that.
Right. We're watching from about where were we? The 15-yard line, I'm guessing at that point. Because they were down on their own one. So we were down that end of the field. So maybe the angle we had wasn't, 100% accurate. But it did. It looked like in the angle that someone might have a chance to cut him off at the legs or something like that. But he says he saw the guy at a corner of his eye and he kind of ran a little bit to his left while still going forward. And, he had that juice to get into the end zone and he avoided the big Fred Sanford, so it lucked out for him.
99-yard playoff touchdown catch. That'll be, won't forget that one. He'll never forget that one. No.
As we look ahead, of course, Marblehead will go to Milton to play Steve Dembowski's team. And, of course, that was a team that in 2002, Jeff Pratt had a 99-yard touchdown catch in the playoffs. So
that's right.
How's that for the over at the Manning Bowl and a win over Norwood it was?
Well, and I think most people I shouldn't say that.
Hold on, Phil. I got to take
Okay.
I'll have to take both of you two guys out to the 99 for dinner with those kinds of observations.
Yes.
Huh?
We should get a
Yes, well,
sponsor.
Maybe not. Go ahead, Phil. I'm
If
sorry.
they're listening, they just opened a new one in Middleton. We'll accept our sponsors here.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. The North Shore Sports Podcast 99 play of the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All
exactly.
right. Well, let's start out with a 99-yard touchdown pass.
We'll
There
have
you
to
go.
rebrand the Century Club to a 99 Club. That's
Yeah.
1 yard. I can live with it. If
Well, he did make the Century Club. He did catch another pass. So it didn't
No, I'm saying in general, if they want to sponsor
Oh.
the Century Club, we'll just make it 99. I can live with losing a yard
Hey.
if it pays the bills, right?
If it's once every 20 years in the playoffs, you score a 99-yard touchdown. That's okay, So we can plan on one in 2042, and whatever. Hey,
Your football's not against the law by then.
yeah. I was going to say, at first I started to say, as most people know, and in fact, maybe people don't know. I mean, maybe that's one of those inside baseball things to put quotations around it where like we know it and maybe we assume other people know it, but maybe the average person doesn't know it. It's Jim Rudloff, who coaches Marblehead, Steve Dembowski, who coaches Milton, formerly at Swampscott, two of the most loquacious coaches certainly you're ever going to meet. I mean, you are never going to be short on quotes when talking to either one of those guys. They'll fill up your tape recorder post haste, which is great. Sometimes you got to filter the stuff out. It's so much, But I don't think, well, I certainly think they respect each other. I don't doubt that. I don't think they go to the Cape in the summer with their families and share sunset views and beverages together. So that, to me, makes this game even more interesting. The fact that you have two coaches who are both brilliant football minds. And I think that's something everybody does know. I mean, hey, when did we really do the greatest coaches series for football? That's got to be going back a ways now.
2008, maybe 2009, something like that.
So we're starting to date ourselves here. The current seniors weren't even in school yet.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Or
they
kindergarten.
Kindergarten, yeah, preschool. At least they were born anyway. That's something.
And off the grid here, Willie and I have talked in the past, like, if we ever redid that list, like it would change from what it was when we first did it. I mean, Jimmy Pugh, David Woods, guys like that you would have to consider that weren't on the list at the time, but what they did with their accomplishments and whatnot. But having said that, when we came out with that list, Steve Dembowski was on it. He was by far the youngest guy. And was he the only active coach at the time, Willie? Might have been.
Jim O'Leary was active as well.
Okay. But Jim,
but certainly much deeper into his career at that stage.
Right. I think Steve was only maybe 8 or 9 years into his coaching career at that point. But he had revolutionized not only his own team, but really the entire area. And if you go to an even greater extent, I think it's fair to say he really revolutionized Eastern Mass by bringing the spread offense to Swampscott, turning the entire conference on its head, forcing them to, how are we defending this high octane offense? Now, of course, everybody runs it, so it's not an anomaly. But at the time, for people who don't know, I mean, 21 years ago when he first did this, Nick, Kooks, were you in high school when
I was a senior the year that they unveiled the spread. So yeah, I remember it quite well.
What was that like even going up against that?
We had to change our whole defense around pretty much. I was quite happy because I lost all pass coverage responsibilities, which I was not very good at anyways. So it was good. I liked the game plan. I had to stand in the middle and watch the fullback. I was quite happy, but yeah, it was interesting. We actually did a pretty good job covering their pass. They beat us pretty good on the run, which says a lot about my middle linebacking skills. But yeah, it was interesting. We completely overhauled everything. Ran a totally different system. Back then we ran a real vanilla 4-4, because nobody passed, and they came out in the spread throwing 25, 30 times a game, and we couldn't run a 4-4 against that. We would have got beaten over the top about 20 times. So yeah, it was revolutionary. It was interesting. They were the only team that did it. They were the only team we had to overhaul anything for. And they were good. I think it was the year before they really hit their own. Beatrice was the quarterback, but yeah. I think it was the next year that they had made the Super Bowl.
Yeah, against North Attleboro, I want to say.
But Nick, I'm glad you mentioned. They're known for the spread and all the points off of the spread, the passing points. but they always had powerful fullbacks and running backs.
Yeah, they did.
And
As
they could
you just
always
Of
they
which
could always
Steve was
grind
one
one
of.
out when they needed to. I always respected that about them.
Yeah.
And they always had a really good physical defense too. They weren't one of those greatest show on turf, Peyton Manning early 2000s Colts where they, front runners that are winging it all over the place. They would knock you in the mouth too when the situation, called for it.
Well, I
So
guess
we
that's
know-
the one thing that I was going to mention about Milton. Just looking over their scores here and watching a half here or there. I mean, I haven't watched a whole lot of Milton, but they 5 of their 8 games they've held their opponents to 7 or fewer points. So this is not like a pinball offense team. This is a complete team. That's really probably much better defensively than people up here that don't get to see them realize. Just looking at some of these scores.
let me just share this one last thing on I talked to Steve Dembowski today briefly. He's talking about
No. No one talks to Steve briefly. You can talk to Steve, but it's not brief.
Nice.
No,
All right.
Steve loves to talk, and it's awesome. Are you kidding me?
No, absolutely.
Conversation when I
But
talk to him.
he's basically saying, I mean, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but this quarterback that he has now in Milton, one of his best. Okay, let's leave it at that. And the running back, he is an outstanding running back on this team too. So this is a good Milton football team, and this running back plays defense and also kicks for the team. So, they're a good team. They're 8-0.
Well, off the top of my head, I apologize. I don't know what the head-to-head record was.
I believe that it was 5-2 for Rudloff.
Okay, I was going to say I knew Jim Rudloff had the advantage. I think there are very few guys that could say that against Steve during his coaching tenure here on the North Shore.
Dan Bauer might be close. I'd have to look it up. That
Who's
comes
that?
to mind.
Who is
Very
that, Matt?
few. Dan Bauer.
Dan Bauer gave him some trouble
Okay.
a few
I
times.
do know they put up a
who gave
61
them
on
trouble?
Swampscott one year when Steve was there.
You know who always gave them trouble too was our friend
Classical?
his name, from Winthrop there.
Pasillo.
Sean Driscoll. Sean Driscoll, great coach. And I not to go down memory lane here, but I presume our other friend Paul Ingram probably had a pretty good record.
Yeah,
There's a guy
Denbo was
that
good for a
nobody
win
has a
over him
winning
every
record
3
against.
years or so.
There's a guy
Well-
that nobody has a winning record against. Not one person probably in the whole state has a winning record against Paul.
But what I was going to say is, Jim is a super innovative football mind himself. He's got great assistants around him, as I'm sure Steve does in Milton, the same way he did in Swampscott. So I think this is, every coach and staff in any game, there's going to be a matching of wits. But I think this one is particularly heightened because there are 2 guys who, as I said at the top here, they respect each other, but maybe don't necessarily want to hang out and go to a Celtics game together, which to me makes for a much more interesting matchup. You're going to do this. All right, well, we're going to try this. And if, the in-game adjustments and whatnot, I think it's really going to be fascinating. I think Milton's the favorite. Swampscott, the defending Super Bowl champion, coming off their best game, should be a terrific night. Marblehead, what did I say? Swampscott.
They are defending champs too, so you weren't totally wrong there.
No, it's a pretty accurate statement, right? Just totally wrong, out of context though. But yeah.
And then, of course, she's not here to speak of it, but St. John's Prep had very little problems with, who was it? Attleboro in the playoffs? Yeah, Attleboro, one of those short teams. I almost said Braintree, but I knew that wasn't it. For the people who say that, these schools shouldn't play, the public schools and all, to me, I'm like, well, it is what it is. I don't think either school is asking to be in a certain division or not or whatnot. So, I mean, you play the schedule you have. So now it's on to Andover for St. John's Prep. And if you look at the seedings, they would be an underdog, however you define that. They've lost twice. Andover has not. I assume, and I should have looked this up, but Andover beat Central Catholic this year, Willie?
I don't know. I mean, Central has a couple of losses. They may play on Thanksgiving. I don't know, or maybe Andover plays North Andover.
I think, I think they did. Wasn't it like it was a tight 2-point game, wasn't it?
30 to 29.
Yeah, 1 point game.
Okay. And Central Catholic, of course, beat St. John's Prep 17-7 in week 2. So by that logic, sure, you could establish Andover playing at home, undefeated, higher seed, and favorite, however big or not you want to make them.
And Andover has scored, it looks like 30 points or more in every game, 40 points or more in 7 of their games. So,
wow. So against everybody but Central.
yep.
And, that says something right there. I mean, they put up 30 on Central. I don't know what week in the season that was, but the Prep, for all their offensive firepower, put up 7. So that tells you something there. Having said that, I get the sense that St. John's has been playing some of its best football the last few weeks. They were a little clunky when I saw them 3 weeks ago against BC High. I think they turned it around a little bit later in the game, but it seems as though against St. John's of Shrewsbury, I mean, it was 48-6 at halftime. They blew right through them. And then last week, more of the same thing. I think they had all of their points in the first half. So they're playing particularly well right now. How will that translate into no offense to anyone else in the schedule, but a real opponent for the first time since Catholic Memorial? We'll find out Friday night. But would it be a surprise to see St. John's Prep win? Of course not. Would it be a surprise to see Andover win? No, not based on what we know of that team. It's Publix Catholics. It's, what a lot of people tend to get up in arms about. I'm sure a lot of people will be happy if Andover win for that very reason. Others will say, well, they don't belong playing St. John's Prep anyway if the Prep wins. So let's see what happens when you get 22 guys on the gridiron going play after play Friday night.
When was the last time the Prep won a close game? Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I mean, it seems like when they're in a close game, they go down, and then every game they win, they're up by 35 at halftime, and that's not their fault, right? But I just wonder, like, if that did affect their, I don't want to say preparedness, because I know the coaches prepare them, but you can't simulate being in a tight game in the fourth quarter. It feels different, right? And just by the happenstance of the schedule, they have not been in a close game in the fourth quarter, but twice in the last 2 years or so? I mean, that's got to be hard as a coaching staff. You want to be challenged. You want to play all 4 quarters. You want your guys to have to play every snap, and they just haven't had much opportunity to do that. Whereas a team like Andover that's been in a few tight games in that MVC, you wonder if maybe that's a small advantage for Andover, if that makes sense. I mean, every single game I think has been running time in the third quarter that the Prep has won. I mean, they've been up. I mean, you can't be up in a playoff game by 40 points at halftime. I mean, that's crazy. That's really nuts. It's not their fault. Like, I'm not criticizing them, but it's just not how you want to prepare for, getting ready for a tough game. You want your guys to get reps. You don't want to feel like you have to pull them out, but you kind of do.
I think in that COVID season, they had a close game with St. John's Shrewsbury, if I'm not mistaken, like 14-7, where they won. But you're right. I know they've lost some of those closer games that have been tight recently. When they beat CM in the Super Bowl, 3 years ago now, that was a 7-point game, right? 21-14 at Gillette.
Maybe the last Crowley game. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting to me that all of their wins seem to be, complete and utter wipeouts. It's just kind of like probably not exactly what they would prefer from a just, getting ready standpoint. You'd like to be able to be in a tight game. You know what? The season opener last year against Mansfield was pretty close. They pulled.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, didn't they win like in the final seconds with O'Fury scoring a big touchdown?
Yeah, something like that. So I mean, it's the kids do have some experience, but it's just like you would like for them to know what that feels like to be in a tight game there in the fourth quarter, if at all possible. And unfortunately, there's just not any teams out there that are capable of hanging with them.
Well, it does appear as though they've settled on a quarterback. I know they played all 4 last week, but that was more because, all right, we're blowing this team out. Let's get everybody some work. But it appears as though Deacon Robillard is the guy they're going to go with, that they feel most comfortable going with, And, he does have all these weapons at his disposal, whether it's Carson Brown in the backfield, whether it's Janelle Aguero, Mason McSweeney, Santo Quinciano, Jesse O'Fury, Stephon Patrick. Get those guys the ball, let them do the work. You don't know what's going to happen. And, last time I talked to Brian St. Pierre, he said health had been a big thing. They just got Mikey Nabu on the line, so that is bound to help this team. They haven't had all 4 captains healthy for a game this season. They're hoping to do that this Friday. So a lot of X factors, I think, for St. John's, but Jeannie DePlaza will be there as always. Boots on the ground, like friend Rob Bradford likes to say. Uggs on the ground in Jean's case, and we'll have the deets for us, so to speak.
Matt, I got to ask you, your game Friday, Peabody, Bishop Feehan, your reaction?
It's just been really difficult, I think, in town. I think, listen, Bishop Feehan was really big and really strong, and you can still win football games with big, strong guys, I guess. I mean, I was walking around in a fog trying to figure out how the heck that team lost to St. Mary's of Lynn, because it just seems completely impossible. And
well, they didn't have that running back when they played St. Mary's of Lynn. They have the big run. They have a big running back, right, Matt?
oh yeah, I mean he was good, but I mean I don't think it mattered. I mean, Dante Bruschi, Teddy Bruschi's kid, ran for 100 yards in the second half after they took that kid out. So I mean, unless he didn't play either, it's just up front. And listen, like Peabody, they own the Northeastern Conference with that quick defensive line. They weren't playing 2 running backs on the defensive line because they thought they were reinventing the wheel. I thought they were outsmarting everyone. That was the bodies that they had. I mean, their big defensive end tore his ACL and their nose tackle has leukemia. So that was the bodies that they had. And against a team like Feehan, it was just a nightmare matchup. Their 2 tackles were both 6'3" and 290 pounds, and going against 5'10", 160-pound guys. I mean, they just put them on the ground literally every play. And that's just that. I mean, the leverage was just unovercomable, and it's just really too bad, because it's the best team that they've had in 20 years, and it's the best quarterback they've ever had, maybe the best quarterback that's ever played in the Northeastern Conference by the time it's all said and done. And he doesn't get to win a playoff game, and you're just left thinking like, well, I guess Super Bowl runs are for other people, they're not for us, because when are they ever going to get back to being at that level? I mean, it's going to be, like Phil said about that 99-yard touchdown run. I mean, it's going to be 2042 before they have another quarterback and a convergence of skills players like this. I mean, if it didn't happen this year, it may never happen. I mean, it really feels, walking out of there felt like a Curse of the Bambino stuff.
So I want to just refocus us here, because we got a few minutes left on the program. Maybe Nick Giannino, we got to touch on soccer a little bit here. We don't want to totally ignore that. We don't have a lot of time left, but if anybody out later on, parting shots, anything else, non-football, or even something back onto football, we'll have some time for that. But Nick, let's just jump to soccer. I know we record this on Monday afternoon now, to put up on Tuesday morning, but what can you share with us on some soccer notes?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, before we get to the playoff stuff, the Northeastern Conference did release their all-star team today. I can go over that real quick. I know Peabody's John Arruda was named Player of the Year. Well deserved for him. I think he's up to 29 goals now after scoring 2 goals in their opening playoff win over South High. That was an 8-2 win for Peabody. Fairly easy advancement in that one. And here we go. I got the awards here. So yeah, Arruda from Peabody. I had a feature on him a couple weeks ago. He came over from Brazil, doesn't speak much English at all, but super talented soccer player. And he's kind of turned that team into a real threat in Division I to make a little bit of a run here. I mean, they got a ton of firepower. So he was Player of the Year. We had Elmer Magana, our guy, take home Coach of the Year from Marblehead. Well deserved there. I know speaking with him at the beginning of the year, he thought they were going to be kind of in a rebuilding year. A lot of young players that he saw potential in, but hadn't really had that varsity experience. And they ended up going well over 500, getting into the Division II tournament. They did end up losing on the road over the weekend to bow out for the season, but nonetheless, he took home Coach of the Year. Masco was the Dunn Division champion at 11-2, and Saugus was the Lynch Division champion at 9-3-1. They've really turned that program around. Other all-conference guys, Peabody's Bruno Correa. We got Beverly's Wilson De Leon and Ian Visnick, a junior and a senior there. We got Marblehead's Isaiah Pena. We got Salem's Chris Kajarzi, Masco's Steve Ralph and Christian Schaefer. From Gloucester, Nick, we got Uniel Sanchez. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Uniel Sanchez and Gino Tripoli. And Marblehead also had Rory Zampese, their sophomore goalie, who had a great year on the team as well. That's pretty much it for locals. So yeah, that was the all-conference stuff. And in terms of postseason successes so far, I got the chance to see St. John's Prep beat up on Beverly pretty good over the weekend. 6-0 win there. Panthers hung tough in the first half. St. John scored a late goal right before the halftime to go up 2-0, and I think that kind of just gave them the necessary momentum to ride it, especially playing at home. They hadn't played in like a week. Beverly had just come off a big win over North Andover 2 nights prior. So good season for Beverly nonetheless. They started off struggling this year and were able to get back to the playoffs. St. John's Prep is a wagon. Very impressed with them, their depth, their skill. They're going to be tough to beat. So they're going to be taking on Milford on Wednesday at home. If they win that one, they'll have one more home game before going to the Final Four, hopefully. And then Peabody is, as we record this on Monday, they're going to be playing tonight against, who was it? Newton South, the number 8 seed. So that'll be a really tough test for them after a fairly easy 8-2 win over South High in the preliminary round. Division 2, Masco still alive. They got a big win over Amherst Pelham, 2-1. They're going to be playing Longmeadow tomorrow, Tuesday at 6:30 at Essex Tech. And we mentioned Marblehead. They lost. Division 3. Do we have any more teams left? Essex North Shore was ousted by Dighton.
Hamilton's still in it, right?
What's that?
Hamilton's still in it?
Yeah,
Hamilton
I think
won
so.
it. So Division 4. Ipswich did pick up a win before bowing out over the weekend to Blackstone Valley. Put up a good fight after beating New Mission 11-0 in the preliminary. They lost to Blackstone Valley 3-2. Scored a couple late goals, made a nice comeback in that one, but couldn't get over the hump. And then Hamilton Wenham, the number 18 seed, had 8 wins this season with 4 ties and 4 losses. They went out and beat Littleton 2-0 over the weekend, and they're going to be playing Pope Francis on the 10th. What's that? Thursday this week at Pope Francis, the number 2 seed in the tournament. But again, I feel pretty good about Hamilton Wenham. I think they probably playing a little bit of a tougher league than Pope Francis, so give them a good shot in that one to advance to the Elite 8.
Rockport's still around on the boys' side too. They play tonight, Monday night,
Right?
again at KIP at Manning Field, 7:30. So that actually, I like their chances in that one. I think they played a tougher schedule than KIP, even if their record is not quite as strong as KIP. So I'm expecting a good game.
What happened with Gloucester?
Gloucester lost to Norton 1-0 on Sunday. Heartbreaker, if we're being honest. They hit 4 posts. They kind of dominated the entire game, and Norton had a nice chance outside the box. They scored from outside the box on a really nice shot, a really nice setup play, and Gloucester was kind of had them on their heels the rest of the game. They just couldn't find the back of the net.
Wow. Guys, we're really out of time, but Matt,
real quick, we should mention Endicott College had a great weekend. Football undefeated in the national polls. They're now 8-0. They won the league title again. They're absolutely rolling 8-0.
None of their games have been even close lately.
No, they've been blowing everybody out.
And they've won they'll be in postseason in the NCAA tournament too.
That's correct. Yep. Which is, which is cool.
What's that?
That's pretty cool. I mean, because we don't have, we don't think of our area as a big time college football area. Endicott's the lone program, and it's still a fair to say somewhat recent sport for the area. Salem State never had a varsity football team or anything.
You think they could beat BC or UMass Amherst this year?
BC, no. UMass, no. But you know,
Fair enough. A little bit of a
Yes, it's pretty
size
bad.
there, I'm sure.
you have well, I think they're what 23rd overall in the country in Division III, which is pretty amazing. You get the women's hockey team, which is ranked 11th overall in the country. You get the men's hockey team, which is ranked 14th overall. I believe both of those teams are 3-1 after this weekend. And you get the volleyball team, which beat Gordon for the Commonwealth Coast Conference Championship. They the NCAAs this week. They play down in Wesleyan in Connecticut, but they're playing Salisbury, I think it is, on Thursday afternoon. So it's as they like to say over there, our friends by the beach. It's a great day to be a Gull, and it certainly is for the fall and winter sports teams over there.
Well, guys, we are just about at the end here. So good stuff this week, a lot of good stuff, and some different stuff. And obviously, we'll be back next week to we can touch on more non-football stuff as our football playoff teams kind of keep narrowing down, as does everyone else. So good stuff, and thanks for your time, and have a great weekend, you guys, or week rather, I should say. It's not the weekend yet. Still got 98 yards to go here, but we'll see what we can do.
Just get the ball to Chris DeWitt. We'll be fine.
Sounds good.